allow me to read you a short, freeform sort of semi-poem, okay? WGZ Blon. Music and dreams. Not drams this time, dreams.
Let music burn.
Since 2014. Yep, Blon are back again with another product, and this time we're bringing in the Blon BL Max. With an interesting shape and a combo of two dynamic drivers, let's see what this new IEM can do in this review of the Blon BL Max. So for the Blon BL Max, we get the sort of just standard white cardboard box with, Blon style of packaging. So that's going to be a big line render of the BL Max in the front. And you see this brand text. It's got like a little holographic blue tint, as well as the BL Max here. It's actually very tasteful and classy, actually. I really like it. Back, you'll get the technical parameters. I got the sky blue version with the mic. But here's something weird, right? Look at this. So in the Chinese, it says the impedance is 32 ohms. But then when you look at it in English, it's 16 ohms. So which one is it? I guess, KZ, they like to advertise the total amount of drivers in both the earphones instead of like the per side, like everyone else. So I guess what Blon is doing is that the BL Max has 16 ohms of impedance per ear? I don't know. When you remove the top portion, you are presented with the Blon BL Max in like a plastic insert, which is especially hard to remove actually. And below that is the compartment for, I guess, everything else with some English on it, I guess. Below the insert, you will find the carrying pouch. This thing, it's basically the same bag as the Blon Mini, so white fabric, blue logo. But again, the texture for this fabric, it's so rough. Like, it looks like a potato sack. Look at this. In the English box, you get 2 packs of ear tips. One is the standard sort of generic smoky silicone tips. You've seen it everywhere. And then in the other, you get Blon's rip-off SpinFit CP500s in medium and small sizes. Again, not sure how legal this is, but hey, it's more extras for the consumer, so as far as I know, it's a win for us. Always, we get the instruction manual printed in Chinese and English. But here's the thing, right? This one packs a lot of philosophical musings, kind of like the freeform poem we got at the start, right? We've, with wisdom such as, let me see, the earphones are not like vases. What else? The soldier will be brave after being ashamed. If you want to achieve something, you must know your own shortcomings first. Really inspiring, really gets you going, huh? So the cable of the Blon BL Max, it's basically the same thing that came with the Blon Mini, so you can refer to that review for more details. The short version is that it looks nice, but the quality control is everywhere. My Blon Mini cable has the right side sound being a little off, but thankfully this one doesn't. Just to be sure though that the cable won't hurt the sound, my testing will mostly be done with this satin audio cable, just in case. If we're just judging by looks alone, then the Blon BL Max does indeed look quite beautiful, but albeit unconventional. From the front, it basically just it looks like a pebble. And the matte texture as well as the light blue shade, it is quite a delight to look at. The side that makes contact with your ears though, it is a little less appealing. and as you can see, there's a bit like a overmolding effect just to get the pebble look of the front. And although it is bigger than other IEMs, you would think that this thing is like wildly uncomfortable and heavy, but the Blon BO Max is actually true to my video title. It really is the comfiest Blon yet. Like the pebble bits, they never impeded my ears, and the inner bit, it goes into my ears snugly and comfortably. It also actually looks nice on your ears if you do care about that. And it's light despite its size, a little heftier than usual, but you know, on your ears you won't feel it, and it basically allows you to try a large variety of ear tips without it breaking your seal. Unlike, you know, like the Blon 03 days where you had to find some deep tips or like foamies to get a good fit. The BO Max, it has a very forgiving fit. Yeah, the Blon BO Max doesn't seem to play well with my sources. The DX150 just makes it muffled owing to its already quite V-shaped and warm sound. The V20 rectifies this, though I wouldn't call it perfect either, but regardless, the LG V20 is what I'm going to be going with for the Blon BO Max. So as far as tip rolling is concerned, thanks to the Blon BO Max's forgiving fit, I am actually able to use foamies on it, and it is going to be your best bet sound-wise too, smoothing out some of the tarp and harshness of the BO Max. I'm going to be using these blue foamies that I got from the Tin Audio T2 review, also on my channel of course, but just use whatever foams are most comfortable to you. A silicone alternative would be these clear Final Type E ear tips. They are different from the normal black ear tip Final Type E's, both in like shape, texture, as well as comfort. But yeah, they are your second best bet with the Blon BO Max. And with all that out of the way, let's get into the sound of the Blon BO Max. So the BO Max, it brings in the typical Blon house sound. It's like a V shape that tries to build itself on the legacy of the now legendary BL03, but I think the changes here just haven't worked out well. Starting with the bass. So, you know, is a Blon even a Blon if it doesn't have smack gobs of bass? Well, surely, you know, the BL Max does bring in enough bass quantity. It hits as hard as any other Blon has, this time with a little bit better extension. Its bass texture, it's a little blocky, but it slams and rumbles with fierceness and like a tenacity. If anything, at times it rumbles in parts of songs you wouldn't even think there's any rumble to show. But the usual weaknesses here are evident, if even more so due to the more prevalent bass presentation. There's just not a lot of bass detail, and this time there is a coarseness in the bass that just doesn't sit well on most songs, save for like heavier genres. The BO Max has a lot of bass for sure, but whether you'd want it is another question. For the mid-range, we have the usual warmish tonality that plays well to most music genres. Its timbre is about right, but the lack of detail in the old offerings has only been slightly fixed. It's an improvement from the previous products, but not enough. I still hear in some busy songs the compression of musical elements into one block. And this time, the sort of bridge between the upper mids and where the treble starts, it's tuned up. And it gives the BL Max a bite in like stuff like rhythm or like dubstep, but it generates a lot of coarseness and harshness with lighter genres that just kills my enjoyment with a large variety of genres of music. These mids are great with heavy genres, but man, there's just little finesse here. And the highs of the Blon BL Max are unexceptional, if a little flawed. It adds sparkle and life to the top end, and most instruments can find space to play here. Airiness is also present, but average, with the other spectrums of the frequency range still being the star of the show. But yeah, that coarseness, it also spreads up to the highs, and it just makes the BL Max very amateur sounding in lighter music. The soundstage of the BL Max is above average, probably because the drivers are spaced a bit further away from your ear canals due to the housing shape. Although there is actually some soundstage height, but not enough to be game changing, unfortunately. Regarding technical ability, the BL Max does not impress. Like, in the vacuum of Blon products, it's improved slightly, but overall, detail retrieval, resolution, separation, and imaging, they remain mostly conventional. Nothing really stands out of the pack here. Blon's tuning philosophy of like this ride or die bass and a warm tonality probably doesn't help with the technicalities as well. Build-wise, the Blon BL Max has done well. The cable looks better, the BL Max themselves are much comfier to wear than the BL03 ever will be, so points to the Max here. But tuning-wise, the thing with the BL03 was that it knew very well its weaknesses, and played to its strengths to circumvent that. Whereas the BL Max, it tries to push, with its best attempt, everything forward, including its shortcomings. Admittedly, the BL Max has better extension in both ends of the sonic spectrum than the BL03. But the softer bass of the BL03, which was enveloping, is replaced by this really rough and overbearing slam of the BL Max. If the BL03's bass slams, it hits you with the feeling of like a really heavy but foam pillow. Then the BL Max is the equivalent of hitting your head with a brick. The highs of the BL03 were omitted because it was, pretty bad, so it just was hidden. Whereas with the BL Max, it tries its best to create what it thinks is clarity, only to end up with grain and coarseness and compression. Not really pleasant. The BL03 continues to win this battle, able to play well with a wider variety of music and keeping the jankiness in its signature mostly hidden from sight, or I guess hearing in this case. Between the Blon Max and the Blon Mini, because they are both pretty recent releases, they do have quite similar packaging, accessories, and the like. But you can see the contrasting design ethos of these two products. The Mini with its compactness, and the Max with its size. I do prefer the Max's matte paint job and the more conventional wearing experience over the Mini's experimental form factor. That and the seams of the Blon Mini are much more obvious. Sound-wise, the Mini is no competition. Like, it has a really muted treble already, which disadvantages it compared to the BL Max. And then there's a bit more detail and separation coming from the BL Max, as expected. Soundstage is also wider on the Max, but consider the fact that the Mini has to do its job with a single 6mm driver, whilst the Max has a 10mm and 6mm driver to pull off its sound. I mean, yeah, the Max wins, but it's a Pyrrhic victory, to be honest. So to end it off, the shadow of the BL3 casted with its debut, it still looms largely on the legacy of Blon. And the BL Max, it continues to be one of a series of failed attempts to try and recapture and recreate that original magic that rocked the chi-fi world. But BL Max, true to its name, plays it big with all its bets, its balls to the walls. But it has forgotten the restraint of its forebears. Its improvements in technicalities ultimately overshadowed by a tuning direction that is just overly aggressive. With tough competition from the likes of Moondrop and the coming KZX Pro, review coming whenever I can get it, I guess, the BO Max is yet another also-ran that, although admittedly comfy to wear, is eclipsed by its predecessors.